Oh, mm. Before I drop in, I just want to double check that you can hear me okay, because I know, yeah, there's been some in and outs with the waves. I don't think it was my Wi-Fi, I think it was my headset, but just want to double check. And I'm actually sitting in my bathroom, um, which leads me to our drop-in request. I'll for in this space. So, um, to give a little bit of a awareness, I chose to go into a guest house. I haven't stayed in a guest house. Um, haven't really understood how guest houses work, but had heard that they're a beautiful option when you're traveling to have like a cheaper option of accommodation and connection and um, yeah, to be able to mm, navigate. Um, it just felt true. It felt true, and I'm understanding why I'm here. But to give some insight, guest houses are usually are usually full of like travelers. There's a lot of language exchange and uh, individuals from different lands. And it's quite interesting. Certain areas will attract just an age bracket. It's kind of reversed to my lifestyle. Um, there's like a whole heap of people coming home right now as I'm getting home, kind of energy, which is interesting. And it's not very soundproof. So I am in the bathroom just for a little bit more security and comfort for everyone. And as I was sitting here, I was like, why do I feel unsafe? That's really interesting. Why am I feeling a sense of unsafety? And I wanted to place the old versions of myself of like, not wanting to be too loud or too, yeah, it was like, and was I afraid that people were going to hear what I was doing? I was a little confused as to why there was unsafety in my body. So I dropped in right before the call started, and the awareness I had was actually very similar to the eclipse. So I know that Amanda and Tinka were the only sisters that came to the eclipse event that I held space and facilitated, and it was not an experience that I would ever recreate. Um, it was exactly what was necessary, but it was basically, to put a long story short, there was really high light beings and high frequency beings that were connected into the heavens, and there was some beings that were working in the underworld. And so there was a portal that was created by anchoring the lower and the upper realms into the center to create an opportunity to clear and purge a lot of distortions from the earth and to bring in new frequency. Now, um, without going into detail of that, um, there is an awareness that where I am right now, um, there is, I would say, in one of the temples. I don't know what direction it is around me, but I'm aware there's quite a bit of demonic activity in one of the temples that's pretty close to me. And there's also a direct ascended consciousness working through one of the individuals that lives in the house. Now, for me, I feel completely safe. It's being able to protect myself, being able to look after myself. Everywhere I go, I don't have any fears of any of those frequencies because I see it through the eyes of love. I know I'm safe, I'm protected. If there was anything that required a little bit of extra protection, then I would just sit and do my coding and sit and look at, is there something that I've haven't seen? Is there a contract, a belief, or some aspect of my inner reality that is still being triggered or activated? as to why I'm not feeling safe or protected. And so for me, the safety piece is not at all about that, but there was an awareness that I have in the awareness of our sacred container, that there was a bit of unsafety as to creating a portal, which is what we do every time that we jump on a call, is we create a portal in this current environment, um, which is not something that I actually have to be afraid of, but instead be aware of to bring up here as a specific initiation training tool, so that we can bring in extra support, extra guardianship, and be very intentional without dropping. And why this is important is so that if there's anyone who's slightly distracted at the moment, or anyone who's in a trigger, anyone who is currently traversing some kind of mirror with a lower dimensional or a descended consciousness, it just means that it allows for the safety of this container, because of anywhere any one of us is at any point in time can influence the space, right? Now I anchor and ensure that I'm very aware, and in the other containers that I've held, I've actually had to say it's not safe for you to be on the call tomorrow. We need to work on whatever this is, because you can't be present. It's too much of a vulnerability point. Now, the first container has a lot more distortions, we'll say, than this space, and not in the way of them not being pure, or of same service. It's just they've had a lot of entanglements, like myself, with a lot of underworld characters and a lot of different mutated relationship dynamics, unions, through time space continuum, where there is influences that have a pretty good hold over their being at times. And it doesn't affect the space if we're solid in ourselves, if we're able to be connected in that way. But if there's a part of us that's choosing to go down the path of dissension, that's when it becomes a duty of care piece around you're not stable enough within your heart and your truth and what you're choosing at the moment. We can assist and align you into that space, or we need to look at if this is the right environment. So this is actually a really great teaching tool, because um, when we go into different sacred spaces, ceremonies, and different environments, there are different layers of consciousness of where different people are working from. And it is something that happens when we go into a space, and a lot of facilitators don't actually have that awareness of different beings that might have demonic energies working through them, right? We all sit into a space, we're like, let's jump into our heart. But if there's not a protection field or a very clear intention that's being placed, um, and you go into a medicine ceremony, for instance, and you're like there to fully surrender and purge and be all of that. If you're a highly sensitive being, sometimes you can end up purging everyone else's distortion consciousnesses, and ending up interweaving in all of these other expressions, rather than being able to really connect into your own experience because of the space that provided. But this is also just life, right? So life is light, dark, and all things, and we don't. And it's really important not to create fear around certain situations, because that's the very thing that will create the distortion in your experience. So as soon as then the fear of, oh, I'm not safe and protected, that creates the weakening in the energy field and the aspect of the self or the environment that's going to create um, an opportunity to be taken, right? To be taken by whatever that expression of consciousness is. Um, so the intention will be when we drop into this space, just to be aware of, well, one, where I am, but we're going to look at where you guys are, because your house, I'm sure, is extremely beautiful in vibration because you sit, you do your meditation practices, and you're connecting in, and you've done however many. I'm sure that you guys go to the same spot every time you jump on a call. Probably you have a spot where you work from, and maybe healing and to feel into. I know that my healing room back at my place in the Sunshine Coast is like a portal. It's like you walk into that and you start to, your consciousness already starts to rise into a higher vibrational frequency. And the healing capacity starts to just happen by being in the space because there's been such a intention set that higher frequencies from the we'll say the heavens comes into that space, and it is a place of healing and transformation. Um, okay, so beautiful. It wouldn't be here. So what I do know about the facilitation is when someone comes up, it's because you're being initiated into it. Your consciousness and your awareness is starting to meet a point where it might show up in your energy field, and it might start to become your reality. Now, this can happen quite a bit. Chakra into uh, to anchor the highest vibrations of light. We also need to witness some of the most separation aspects of consciousness, and we talk about it in healing of foundations and aspects of our root chakra trauma, or maybe the dark masculine and the dark feminine, and distortions in sexuality, and all of those different aspects. That's the inner world, right? There's also this awareness of what's beyond the inner world, the outer world, and that what exists in those ways will exist in all layers. It takes a while for the brain to really compute that. But as you're anchoring your magnetic self, your source frequency in, the more high vibrational light becomes, you can meet some contrasting energies as polarity. And you can dance with polarization until you step beyond it, and then you can be in it, and it's not, it's not a, it isn't a aspect of your reality. If you're at peace with all aspects of your own reality, and that's therefore the external reality, so it becomes neutral and it doesn't have a charge. Um, but the interesting part around how this can initiate woman, powerful woman, and man, but initiate powerful beings is that you can come up against energies that don't have the same beings that have incarnated to have a different agenda, a different mission, a different goal. And it's pretty hard for us because we kind of do have the love and light narrative, as much as I don't like to say it. Most of us have this like really pretty, bubbly idea that everyone has good intention, that everyone's doing the best they can, everyone wants to, meet a level of love and unity. They just don't know how, and it's their wounding, and we have all these stories. And they are stories. Now, I know this has been so hard for me, so hard to go, oh, wow. And only because I kept meeting it in my eyes, and I actually would face it. what I had to accept. And a big reason that I didn't want to open my third eye, being that of my last chakra system, was that I didn't want to see the reality of the world. And I would say it for 2 years. I was like, I don't want to see. I don't want to see all that stuff. I don't want to see the darkness. I don't want to see. I know it's there. I don't need to see it. Right? So that was literally my story. I know it's there. I don't need to see it. And I was quite happy to stay in that denial aspect, but I couldn't evolve. And I also kept meeting, because I do want to choose truth. I kept meeting all the things that I didn't want to see to allow them to be accepted. Um, and that was accepting that there are beings that do not have good intentions. There are malevolent beings that will intentionally cause harm. There are energies that just do not see the world the way that you do, and it can be extremely confusing. And if you don't have or have not experienced descendant consciousness, which is another trick of this reality and spirituality, is there's quite a lot of beings, especially ones that have experienced a lot of descendant consciousness, that say we've been all things, right? We've been all things. So, we've got to learn to love all parts of ourselves because we've been all things. Now, if you have that belief system, you can adapt to believing that you have been something that you have not. And it's not to make it wrong that you haven't been that, but it's also to recognize that I have not been that, I am not that. And I need to understand that because I'm not, it's not innately being an experiential part of my journey. And if you haven't descended, and I never have descended beyond the third dimension, right? So, although I was entrapped in the underworld, my consciousness never dropped beyond the third dimension. So, it was like being the fallen angel entrapped in the underworld and in trauma, because I didn't allow my consciousness to drop to that level of experiential learning. So if you can envision like the angel that's like literally the light in around all the demonic feeding and different things, and they're all having a really great time, right? Because when you drop your consciousness to whatever level of descension, right? We've all descended from heavens down to this three-dimensional plane. So we've all descended in some form. But when we talk about from the human realm of descending beyond the third dimension, we haven't all done that, and it would be confusing to your inner being and to your layer of consciousness if you believe that you have had a demonic expression. You have done this. You might have been involved in demonic acts at times, or satanic feeding, or trickery and ceremonies, or magic, or whatever that is. But to say that you have been all things is inaccurate and untrue, and can be extremely confusing as you're remembering who you are. Um, and it also means that if you haven't, you're going to be fascinated by those that have, because you don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Right? So for me, as I was saying, I just couldn't understand how anyone didn't have the same intention that I did, because I have not dropped beyond this point of consciousness, which is why I danced so much with the underworld characters, because I was trying to make sense of those realities. And so I drew them into my energy. Now, you don't have to do that. We can do it in the ways that we are. Okay, instead of initiating myself to understand one-dimensional consciousness and two-dimensional consciousness by initiating myself through those realms in that way, I'm going to do it from a conscious place of starting to see beyond what my lens of experience is, beyond my remembrance, beyond what I've come to know as to who I am. Um, and that is definitely something that I would much prefer for you all to move through, and also shows the difference, as I've spoken into the difference of the containers. A lot of the girls have done a lot of journeying with descended aspects of even themselves, or with extreme levels of that consciousness in their reality. Whereas this uh, not that you haven't, but there's a difference in the frequency. And when we tuned in that lesson, I was like, feel the difference in the two containers, and you're like, oh, it feels a lot lighter, right? Everyone noticed that it felt like a lighter, stronger pillar of light. Now that energy is because there has been less. Mm, less disruptions, weaknesses into the energy field that has entangled it with consciousness that is not you. So there's just a little more purity, and which is also where it can attract through the polarity that which is not pure, to understand that which is not pure, to see that I am a pure expression of consciousness. Does that make sense?